I try to think back to when I stopped trusting Democrats. And it was probably with the election of Bill Clinton. And I should probably, again, say not Democrats so much as Democratic leadership. With Republicans, because maybe they were my party and I was just so prone to believe the good intentions, it took a lot longer. Not that I was ever blind completely to some of the things that were, I don't know, I don't want to say shady, but shady. I never, I always wanted to believe the explanation, the reasoning behind why they were doing what they were doing. But I never gave up on trying to understand why the Democrats were doing what they were doing either. To me, it's just different ways to approach it. But for the Republicans, the pendulum has swung and they completely lost my trust, the Republican leadership, particularly with the election of Donald Trump. And I watched since 2008 and President Barack Obama, who I wasn't a huge fan of politically, but I thought he was a good man and trying to do what he needed to do and what he said he was going to do. There were no surprises. And I watched the Republican Party demonize him in a way that they hadn't even really demonized Bill Clinton for all of his trespasses. Um, and to me, he's not much different than Donald Trump in some ways. In other ways, yes. And I guess that's where I'm at now with the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. At least Democrats are still saying that they care for people. I believe that Republicans cared. I believe there's still a lot of Republicans that care, but they are giving all their power and all their loyalty to a man who doesn't, and to an administration and the power behind that man, as they just rip into all of the programs that help the less fortunate, as they rip into all of the laws and policies and things that are put in place to keep people honest. And as the Trump administration, knowing, all right, I know this, I know that back and forth, the Democrats and the Republicans have both been guilty of gerrymandering. But the president went ahead and just decided that he didn't care about the ethics of it anymore, right? At least we used to pay homage to ethics. We used to pretend there were ethics when we were drawing these lines and these boundaries. And so I don't see any way around this because this is going to keep happening and this is going to keep escalating without a federal law requiring there to be independent redistricting commissions. Because leaving it in the hands of the lawmakers just means that those in power can give themselves more power. And we would like to think that they are good people and that their ethics are strong enough that they are not going to do what is going to give them more power and that's most expedient for them, but that they will care about what is best for everybody. I don't believe that anymore. I have actually gone out of my way at times to make sure that people who have less power than me, whether I agree with them or not, actually have enough to challenge me. And I do mean that politically. My husband and I used to run caucuses, and there have been times where I stepped down as somebody who put themselves in the running for a position because I wanted people to participate. I wanted them to understand the power. I wanted them to understand the responsibility. whether I agreed with them or not. And it's kind of low stakes in that situation. But what we're playing with now is very high stakes. And we have people being disenfranchised like I never thought I would see in my lifetime. I believed that we were beyond this. I believed that we would be beyond disenfranchising the impoverished and minorities and women, right? And people give all of these reasons. I was reading, as a matter of fact, I was reading the newsletter for the National Federation of Republican Women today, and I was looking at all of the things that they were saying, but there was nothing they were putting to back up their claims that the Democrats have gerrymandered far more than the Republicans have. At the most, I think it's close to even, but at this point, the Republicans have gerrymandered quite a bit in the last few years. It's not much of a contest. And I can put some things in the comments or the link below so that people can see where I'm getting my information. But some of these other claims, they're not putting their information, not putting where they're getting the information for those claims. And that's something that's kind of important to me. I know that I say a lot of things. It's usually something I have heard somewhere that has backed and cited their source, and I just have to go back and find it. But it needs, again, we need to make sure that people have power, that people feel empowered. And the truth is, Donald Trump has made a lot of people feel empowered. Now, they're not necessarily people I want to have power, but I think everybody at the very least needs to feel empowered, because it's really easy to manipulate people who feel like they don't have power to make their lives better. And it's certainly why we have a lot of people in this country who don't vote and who don't think that their votes count. And so I'm wondering, if you're someone who chooses not to vote, who chooses that just don't think that your vote counts, that there's no point in participating in this political process that does assign power, what would do it for you? What would make you want to vote again? What would motivate you to participate in this process and to take your power and to give it to somebody trustworthy? Because right now, if we keep gerrymandering and we keep redistricting the way that we do, we are going to have legislators who have no accountability to the voters because they've picked their voters and they know nobody's going to mess with their seats. So what's going to do it? What would do it for you? If you are not a voter and you feel powerless and you don't even want to participate in the process, what would motivate you to start? And that's what I'm thinking about tonight.